Let's call the meeting to order at 7:04 p.m. We're going to start with a salute to the flag. Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please join me in a moment of silent reflection. Thank you. Sunshine Law notice. In accordance with the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Act, public meetings may be held in person or by means of communication equipment to include streaming services and other online meeting platforms. This meeting is being held in person through the Zoom meeting platform, being broadcast from Borough Hall, 748 River Road, Fairhaven, New Jersey. Public participation for this regular council meeting of June 27th, 2022 is available by call-in phone number or through web conference Zoom. Members of the public will be on mute until it's time for questions or comments, which will be announced. At that time, the public has the opportunity to question, comment by phone or through Zoom by the raise hand button and will be called on at the appropriate time. Notice of this meeting was included in a schedule of meetings, which was adopted by resolution number 2022-13 and sent to the Asbury Park Press, the Two River Times, the Hub, and Star Ledger on January 6, 2022, posted on the Borough website, the bulletin board in the municipal building, and has remained continuously posted as required under the statute. With adequate notice having been given, the Borough Clerk is directed to include this statement in the minutes of this meeting. Allison, may I please have a roll call?
Council members Kristen Keith.
Yes.
Cole.
Here.
Here. Betsy Koch. Here. McHugh.
Present.
Neff. Rodriguez.
Here.
And Attorney Cannon and Engineer Berdella are also in attendance.
Mitch, can you please join me up here? So right here is good. Well, let's make sure your family can see actually what's happening here. So today we're going to honor Mitchell Martin. For those of you that don't know, I think most of us know there was a fire on Fairhaven Road going back to May 25th. And, I guess we all wonder when these moments happen and we need to step up, are we going to answer that call, answer that bell? And Mitchell on that day absolutely did, and he saved lives. So on behalf of the entire governing body and the borough staff and emergency services, the entire community, we felt it was appropriate to definitely bring it in here and honor you for your courage. So this is a proclamation commending you for this heroic act. Whereas on May 25th, 2022, a Fairhaven Road home caught fire. And whereas Mitchell Martin, a borough resident, was driving along Fairhaven Road when he observed smoke and fire coming from the residence of 182 to 184 Fairhaven Road. And whereas Mr. Martin, without hesitation, ran up onto the porch barefoot and began banging on the doors and windows of the residence to alert any occupants of the fire and that they needed to exit the home immediately. And whereas a male occupant came to the door unaware of the fire, was able to safely exit through the rear door with his dog, and Mr. Martin was able to safely exit the porch to the street. Whereas the residents quickly became completely engulfed in flames and spread to the nearby neighbor's home. Now therefore be it proclaimed that I, Joshua Halpern, and the Fairhaven Borough Council hereby commend and thank Mitch Martin for his bravery and quick action, which resulted in no injuries or loss of life.
I'd be happy to take that photo.
Just told my college buddies they're going to leave it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, here. Yes.
Don't remind us.
we stick around or?
That's up to you.
Have
you signed
So,
Yeah.
Thank
Thank you, go to the restaurant with this.
Okay. Moving along to workshop session, starting with facilities. So basically, Teresa put together an email here. As you know, Teresa's not here tonight, so we'll try and patch this together. The initial part of her email has to do with the police department site. I think what she's trying to gather, so we can move the process forward, is whether the governing body agrees with, or I should say, there's 4 people that agree with the idea of the sketch that was put together to put an additional room into the storage building in the back. And then along with that, obviously, there would be some fees for Eli to redesign the space into what's proposed there. And those fees were initially quoted at $25,000. So, I mean, I don't know if anyone has anything else they'd like to add to that before we sort of start discussion specifically on that component of the email. And then we certainly can move on to other parts of this facilities email as well, if you think it's appropriate.
I support the redesign, and it's gonna cost us something, and now we're capping it, I guess, at 25, so 25,000.
I don't think it's capping it. I think the fees reference were initially quoted at 25,000.
Well, there's a table here that lists all of the expenses associated with it, and it came to 23,800.
I think that's for a
That's
different
for a
scope of
different
work.
site.
Yeah,
That's for DPW.
yeah.
That's to determine whether DPW is feasible to.
To be.
And we'll get to that.
Yeah.
That's something that we probably need to discuss as well. We heard from Chris, Meg, sorry, Councilwoman Chris Martinez.
Just to make sure that we're not mixing topics here. The discussion is about the proposal for the feasibility study at DPW, or the discussion is about the multipurpose?
I'm sorry, let's start with just the multi-purpose room and whether
Okay.
we want to spend additional funds on moving that forward with Eli in the neighborhood of $25,000.
So the fee is for him to do the entirety of the plans
And to
The
get the quotes
design.
from the subs and some other, yeah.
to bring us to the same procedural posture that we are with the PD building itself. Am I correct about that? Based on this sketch here.
Right.
Okay, so maybe we should talk about the sketch as a threshold issue, because if people don't like that or have problems with that, then we're kind of
2 questions.
back to square one,
Are
right?
you on board with the generic, the basic sketch that he's put forth?
Yep.
Obviously, I'm sure it can change with small edits here and there, but if you're on board with
Generally.
that, and we have 4 yeses on board with that, then do we have 4 yeses
For
on
the
the
25,000.
additional cost?
My question on the sketch is, can someone tell me, I know there was a discussion of expanding it, a bit of square footage. Is that clear? That wasn't clear to me.
I think they,
I believe that is encompassed in here. So
Yeah.
it shows a plus or minus 30 by 36 building or multi-purpose room.
Does someone have the last version? Because I remember that he initially noted that the room was a bit small.
Originally, the square footage was 1,100 square feet. Does it say on there?
1080.
But he
Yeah.
also put a kitchen or something into
He
it. or
stripped
vestibule.
down, he created a vestibule and tried to work on some of that internal circulation with the bathrooms
Yep.
and the kitchen area, the little kitchenette area, and things of that nature.
Yeah, I think I'm generally on board with this. I guess my question would be, the size of the room, I would want it to be, I know that, I'm curious if the vestibule and closet and kitchenette encroached on the room itself, such that we might want to consider making it more on par with our current multipurpose room. Which I think feels appropriately sized.
Mhm. I think
Well,
that's
this is
closer
30
to
by
13.
36,
Right,
which is It's a very large room.
I think it was at 1,100 and the community center space is just under 1,300, is that right? So we're talking
Sounds about
about,
right.
talking about a couple hundred square feet, so you could come out a little bit. Really now's the time to make that determination.
Right,
We
Getting
don't have to
costs,
decide
yeah.
that here, though. I think what we're just trying
Sure.
to get is a general sense.
Yep.
Are
okay.
we on board?
So, yeah,
You don't have to finalize.
I don't mean to
the
go
plans.
granular, I just know that that was one of the topics of discussion. One of my
Sure.
concerns is, are we making something that's too small to meet our needs?
I think it approximates the space that we have now.
Right, because it's a little bit
Be a little bit
differently used,
smaller,
because
so.
there is that entry sort of way. Generally, I think that the redesign sketch is functional, and I would be on board for, you know, the additional fees in order to achieve this alongside the police department. So then, in my eyes, it's a full replacement. Then obviously we would need to work on the basketball, tennis court, wall, other out exterior rec spaces, but for me, then that becomes a complete replacement, so.
Your go on
I think the general
the
design
sketch
makes
as well
sense.
as.
Yeah, I think we should definitely make sure the square footage is appropriate and feels good, and right sized, but otherwise, I think the sketch makes more sense than the other one that was presented.
Thank you, Councilwoman Koch.
I would agree. I wasn't a big fan of doing this in the beginning, but the way that the design has been initially presented makes sense, and I think it does provide our residents with room to meet for a variety of reasons or purposes, and I am in favor of it.
Thank you, Councilwoman Koch. Councilman McHugh.
Similarly in favor of it, barring the fact that, you know, the police storage, the original need here hasn't changed or shrunk or anything. I like the entrance, change in the entrance, especially for the male room, so you don't have to go down that alleyway. Increasement in the size, we have to keep into consideration that Rossi space there, so we can't definitely push this room to the south. We're somewhat constrained there, but it's like the best use of space. I mean, all our needs are there. Aesthetic wise, let's see what happens. I guess the plan would be just to carry the roof line straight from the peak. So, you remember what the height of that roof line was, Rich?
1 story, so I think it was less than 18,
Okay,
you know, in that ballpark,
all right, yeah, that seems,
depending on the slope of the roof.
that seems fine.
Yeah.
Just there was some resident neighborhood concern about the height. The original multi-purpose room that we quoted in the beginning, so yeah, it looks good, so go for it.
Okay, thank you, Councilman McHugh. Councilman Cole.
I also think that this is a reasonable and sort of frugal response to supplying a facility that will be abandoned when we do go ahead with the PD. And I'm beginning to want to see that happen. So this seems to me the shortest distance between, you know, from where we are now to getting it replaced and back into circulation for the community. It's used 300-400 times a day. We really can't be without a meeting room. So I'm in favor of this, and I would also ask that that we start to and that we ask Eli to begin to put together cost estimates for, assuming he hasn't provided this already, but we're going to need a spec book and bid docs and all that sort of next phase of work. I'd like to know what we're looking at on the horizon, just to get the police department and this garage / meeting facility out to there.
I'll just quickly comment. There's a couple ways you can handle that. You can do what you mentioned. You can revise the drawings prior to bidding and put in all the specifications and the proper plan for that. He also mentioned you can bid it as is and then do an addendum
Hmm.
So that'll expedite the process
Mm.
rather than spend, get it out on the street if you choose to bid, the PD as is. And then issue an addendum for this specific building with whatever
Right,
floor plan we come up with, because it's really just an extension of what's in the plan set. It's gonna carry that same roof line. It's not gonna really involve too much on his end to do that addendum versus go back, what are there, 200 sheets of plans, you have to change things, and when you change something one place, you gotta make sure it's consistent throughout, so there is that option as well.
Rich, is it your understanding that we have what we need to put this out to bid?
Though everything is substantially complete, the plans, the specifications, the bid documents, all the work completed by all of his subs,
Yeah,
his professionals, yes.
I'm pleased to hear that.
And that includes the original police storage area, right?
It includes the original police storage area plus the bathrooms and that outdoor overhang. So it will just be a modification. You issue an addendum to provide, hey, bid on this instead. Take out what's shown on the plan, and then here's an insert. So
Okay.
the only thing I do want to talk about, and it is in Teresa's email, and it's something I brought up with her after our last council meeting that we had on Zoom, is parking considerations. Obviously, with just the OEM storage building and bathrooms, it was going to function more as a flex space for during field time and things of that nature, where now we're creating more of a multi-purpose room. So you need to consider off-street parking, even the parking on Fisk in front of the church area, that curb line kind of next down. That was part of that off-site improvement we were looking at, trying to widen that a little bit to Maple, provide some on-street parking or better circulation. But also looking at the PD plan as it is now, where, as you know, it's like an L-shaped parking lot, which there's 20-something spaces that we show.
What are there what are there now? How many spaces are there currently versus what we're putting in?
It's pretty compatible. I can certainly pull an aerial up and do a quick count, but being that we know we've got issues now with the current community center and parking, people tend to double park, triple park, drop off becomes an issue sometimes. So we need to look at that. We've got obviously the employees that work at PD, their personal vehicles. You've got the PD vehicles themselves, some of the OEM stuff. So we really need to look at a hard count of what is necessary for that building to function, and then what's that number gonna be? Are we looking at 50 people, 75? I don't know what this room's rated for off the top of my head. And there's opportunity to share a parking lot next door with the church. We always talked about that. With, the property to the east, it's right there. But that would be more of a formal shared agreement, obviously from a liability standpoint, you want to have all that, in place. Even, is there adequate lighting if there's a night meeting or a night function going on in this multi-purpose room? So that's kind of bulleted in her email.
Question on that, Richard?
Section there.
Yeah, a quick question on that. Are you able to, I don't know if you're doing a formal count or if you're just looking at the proximity to the community center, but are you able to include the parking on 3rd Street as parking for the community center?
Yes, yeah, when you look at it, you have to kind of look at it,
As-
within
Yeah,
a certain radius
okay,
per se.
okay.
3rd Street is a short walk to this
Mhm.
facility, especially if this facility is facing 3rd Street.
Right,
It'd be easy to walk past the stone path and,
sure.
enter the building. Yeah, there are a number of spots there on 3rd, maybe 8 to 10.
Can I piggyback off of that? If we included the parking lot that was with the DPW plan, that'd be an option too, or is that too far out?
No, that would be an option. That what he's referring to is the parking lot we were looking at putting on Third Street in front of the DPW facility, which would function during the day for DPW, and then after hours, it would be a direct access across the street to whether you've got, community events going on here, the fields, obviously we do National Night Out there, other things that
Just a
happen.
baseball. game.
Even
It
the,
gets
even
back.
the summer camps and things of that nature that go on, baseball, whatever it may be. Yeah, that was how we were kind of creating this master plan and design to try to feed off these different facilities based on proximity and walkability. So,
I'd also like to put it on, this seems like the right time to say we should provide some dedicated bicycle parking.
bicycle parking,
In the area.
definitely, there's definitely room to incorporate that into here. But obviously budget, because we were starting to scale back some of the off-site improvements when we started talking about this facility, where some of the walking paths within the community center are in pretty poor condition. There's that paved area that comes along by the one basketball court adjacent to the parking lot at the PD now. And we had incorporated that into the PD site to try to, tie it in a little better, but
It's hard to know where to stop.
it's hard to know where to stop
Except-
because,
I
The
think-
parking lot, can that be put in after? In other words, if we went forward with the plan without the parking lot across the street?
yeah.
And
I
then we
think-
decided after the fact, this is a parking issue, we need to add
Like an
additional parking. Can that be done after the fact, or is that?
It could be done after, it could be phased, yes. One thing I would recommend is to simply do a needs assessment.
Mhm.
You know what the demand is gonna be for PD.
Mhm.
You can easily calculate your highest intensity use at the multipurpose room.
Mhm.
Figure out what you have on street, on Third Street. What opportunities you have next door at the church. And just add it all up and see where you are. And if you're deficient, then yeah, we have to do something. And it's really just a numbers game.
Yeah, I go to the garden club meetings every monthly, and they get really great attendance.
Yeah,
It's between 50 and 60 people usually every meeting. And you do have to jockey. But somehow it always works out just fine. Everybody finds a spot, sometimes you walk in a little bit more. I think small town means you're never that far from your destination. But we should look at it.
this configuration is a little different too, because PD is gonna be shifted off, to the northwest corner. The parking lot's now gonna swing around the building, so you're gonna have to allow for that proper, access in and out. And then obviously we would have to keep, we can stripe or sign no parking in front of this garage
Mhm.
area, but there is a chance people may pull up and say, oh, I'm just here for a few minutes, and then it's an hour or whatever it is. It happens all the time. So that's stuff you have to look at. It's really internal circulation, number of parking spaces, the need for parking, other opportunities for parking, and go from there. So it's just something I wanted to bring up, because you don't want to build something like this. You build it, they will come, and then now you've got this.
Well, we won't be worse off
Issue.
than we are now.
Thank you. Let's move along to the DPW side, if that's okay. Betsy, do you have that piece of paper you had open before? So basically what we're discussing now is to go forward on this site. The focus, I guess, is on two things, whether we could potentially renovate a building such as that, or whether we could build a new structure within the same footprint of where the existing building is to save some money on some of the site costs. Eli had presented a document here, I'm sure I can pass down if anyone needs to see it. He was looking for $23,850 in a feasibility study.
Mayor, why did Eli prepare this proposal and at whose request?
So I would say that was based on a meeting that the facilities committee had, or might have even been a subset of the facilities committee as far as how we were going to move forward
Mhm.
after the governing body did not have 4 votes worth of support for the DPW plans as they were presented. Ultimately, I'm not gonna speak as to whether it needs to be Eli or someone, but we're gonna need some sort of professional intervention to help us with how we move forward here. So that's what we're here to discuss. I think whether it's Eli or someone else, we need to give direction so that we can make sure that they're working in a place that's safe and up to spec as it relates to, that building was built 50 years ago.
Yeah, 1974, almost.
So one of my questions is, and I'm not gonna pretend to understand Eli's expertise. And one of the reasons I'm grateful to our facilities committee, because a lot of them do have a professional experience here and they're lending their time, volunteering their time for the borough. If I understood the discussion, it was largely to leave multiple elements in place as they exist today, but to replace them. And that was one of the driving factors in coming up with a potential new proposal, because it would drive costs down. Do I have that right?
As I saw him, and maybe Rich, you were on that call as well. There were two separate things discussed.
Right.
So I'm assuming you're saying that the site as it functions today would basically remain as is. The
Right.
recycling area would stay, the salt storage area would stay,
Right.
the fuel pumps, although they need to be replaced, would essentially stay where they are. The building would be, the purpose of this would be a feasibility from architects, engineering, mechanical, plumbing, all that. Look at the existing structure, figure out what is salvageable. I think, in my opinion, the building, you can renovate the building. You may not have much left when you're done, but you've got a structure with basically a roof, and the way it's supported is columns and beams. And all the walls in between are really just partition type walls. So you can take all that out, put in the proper HVAC systems, code compliant type stuff, air quality, obviously put a new roof on, et cetera, et cetera. But before he really dives into this, he would have to kind of go through, talk to his sub-professionals, say, hey, listen, what's involved? What do we need to do? And then you kind of do some, sketches and put things together, and then obviously assess and do some cost estimating. The biggest question is the storage. We've got the 5 containers, which are the old tractor trailer containers on site. Ideally, we want to see them go away. So to make them go away, in his proposal, he even mentions building a new storage building. Now, in our initial meeting, we had, which kind of came out with this type of proposal, is if we were going to renovate, we need to create some type of flex space to continue our operation there. Because if we're going to renovate, we're probably going to have to vacate the building, or mostly vacate the building. We could try to phase it, but it becomes logistically difficult as a general contractor to do that, especially if you got to do a complete tear off of the roof and really get involved with taking out some of those partition walls. So there's benefits of building a storage building and then allowing us to use that temporarily. And then I think obviously you may have to maybe put a small office or something there, or bathrooms, with a temporary hookup to get us through whatever that time frame is, if it's 18 months, 24 months, I don't know. So this is kind of, these disciplines kind of figure out, all right, if this is the direction we're going in, and yes, you're right, there are cost savings, because there's not the extensive stormwater management, there's not the extensive, all the other site improvements. If you remember, most of the costs were site related.
Yes, so I think that really helps answer my question, because
And I was even able to find, I found the original drawings from 74. And I had them scanned in.
Intentionally or by happenstance?
No, I told Eli, I'm gonna look for them. We're
And
gonna
you
find
found
them. We found them. And I had them PDF'd. I'm gonna send everything over to him. So at least he knows too structurally, okay,
Here's,
this is what the foundation looks like. These are what
Right.
the footings look like. These are the existing columns, et cetera, et cetera.
Would that save us a little money on his
That'll
proposal?
save us some money. And then back in 14, 8 years ago, we authorized a roofing consultant to do a roof design for us with my assistance.
Okay.
They did the design and then I would sign off as the engineer. I have all that done.
Okay.
So there is some cost benefit to some of this. And then I even looked at the fuel pumps. We can do the fuel pumps through state contracts. So we're getting some quotes in from state vendors.
Okay,
We had a major failure a week and a half ago. We couldn't get fuel. We had to go to our neighboring town, luckily, to get fuel for almost a week. So it's not a major inconvenience, but it is when you gotta drag the 5-gallon cans over there and, you know, even inconvenience them and things of that nature. So luckily, we were able to do some Band-Aids on that to buy us some time, but there are opportunities to save a little money where we can do the fuel pumps if that's the direction we go with. Maybe we get the roof put on this summer or the fall or whatever that is gonna be, because I don't know if we're gonna make another winter. We
So
had
would
we had a
the
collapse
1970
internally.
with the 1973 as-built that you found, as well as the roof that you had designed, and did you ever get a price for it? Or it would cost something different now, but.
We had allocated some funding back then. I think it was about $75,000, but I
Okay.
think you probably need to double that.
Yeah, yeah.
I even found the old roofing plan from 91, so this roof is 31 years old. It's a 20-year roof, if that. You know,
So-
'cause it's a commercial roof.
I would expect that you, since you've done this good work and found it and pieced it together and made it available, that Eli's proposal would come down. The cost for this analysis and his fees would come
His
down.
final scope of work potentially could come down, yes.
so,
Yes.
Rich, that's really helpful though, because I think it's helping narrow what Eli's scope of work really is. If the elements generally are staying in place at DPW, this is really, just like you said, what is salvageable of the building in terms of a renovation, and the project objective says that here determine construction costs and professional fees needed to rehabilitate the existing building to give it 20 more years of useful life. So I think the two important things in my mind of all of this is to say, it sounds like if we were to proceed with this, we would consider replacing several of the elements that are in place such as the fuel pumps, leaving the site work as is, and then seeing how much it's basically just giving us an insight into how much longer or what rehabilitation could be done to extend the life of the current building.
And also.
I guess one of my questions would be, and I don't know if anybody knows the answers or if it's been looked at, is should we be stopping here and saying, what if we just replace the building in place versus a study on the rehabilitation of the building to give it 20 more years?
Well, and
Because
where
it's
did 20 years?
Apples
come
and,
from?
it's apples and oranges.
Mhm.
And we're spending money on apples to see what it's gonna cost to get 20 more years of that apple versus a brand new orange
Or-
over here.
As Teresa mentions in her email, the plans are done. Bid it as an alternate with PD and see where the number comes in. So you actually have a real number.
You mean as the complete overhaul site
It's
work?
not gonna
the
cost you
whole-
anything.
Doesn't
Right.
cost anything.
It's done.
It doesn't.
And
Right.
it'll.
It would be
you know,
good to know that number.
sets a
It would,
baseline.
it'd be great to know that number.
How is that gonna delay this process?
Well,
It's.
I just don't wanna set back this process
It's
a
gonna-
month because we're waiting for that number. Can we do them concurrently and without spending money, or
Well, that's the thing. You're gonna put this out, if it goes out to bid, realistically in 30, 60 days, and then you're gonna bid this job out for, a short length of time and then take the bid and go through that whole process. So, yeah, you might lose 3, 4, or 5 months here. So you're kind of you're at a crossroads.
Well, I hesitate to spend $23,000, almost $24,000 to determine what it's gonna cost us, just to determine what it's gonna cost us to get 20 more years of useful life out of a building that is already severely failing, when the cost to replace it could be comparable, but we've already spent $23,000 on just the study. So I just, now we're.
I'm not in favor of. this
22,
scope of
yeah, no, I'm
study
just-
At this moment.
Trying to look at the,
I'd really rather see us focus on getting DPW. It sounds like it's teed up. We have a really good plan. There seems to be consensus around it. I think we should know what next steps are. Well, I don't want to see us lose focus on getting PD done. And we also have to understand what's on the horizon. To me, making sure that our DPW at minimum has the roof it needs, make sure that it's structurally sound, that it's safe. And this to me is important, that we pause the time to make those plans and look long-term at the other facilities that we have. I don't know that we need to get 20 years out of it. It would be nice, but we need at least 5 to 10. And is that less money? I think what my sense is, somebody's gonna bring up Borough Hall, somebody's gonna look at, somebody's gonna say something about the rush burning sites, and there's a number of facilities that are under the umbrella of facilities. And they're all asking for a little bit of attention, some more than others. So I don't know what kind of position we're gonna be in to look at that if we look at each thing in the silo.
so are you suggesting then we put it out to bid as an option on the PD as they exist?
No, I'm not suggesting that.
What do you, I'm confused.
I'm suggesting we continue to support Rich's work in identifying this readily available information, or some maybe not so readily available. And maybe, some friends of the borough to see if we can find out what it would cost to do some major repairs that would get the roof done. I don't have a list of the things that need to be addressed. It sounds like Rich has a pretty good handle on some of those things, maybe even, I don't want to say all, because there might be some additional things to poke around at, but
So
I don't know.
you're
but it needs-
suggesting an even
our-
shorter view of, let's put some more Band-Aids on this and then revisit and come up with a broader plan longer term. Is that what you're suggesting?
I think that I can't forecast the future, but some of that conversation that we had during the capital improvement session suggested there were people looking at long-term projects, not the least of which is the purchase of 2130 the road, and all these things cost money. So I'm interested in making sure we address the DPW, but I think we don't have a lot of money to work with.
The challenge, and this was asked at the last meeting about Band-Aids, we use that term Band-Aid. We're beyond Band-Aid.
I know.
We're at failure. That roof Band-Aids have been put on for 8 years. We've done all the magic we can. The fuel pumps, you can't get parts for them. It is what it is. But we're getting some hard numbers and some costs to see what it would take to do a full replacement. But to your point, the site as it's designed today, if we were to put that out to bid, shows those elements in different locations in the site. So to put in new fuel pumps, they weren't going there, in the new site. So that's why I say we're at a crossroads.
Rich,
We kind of have to figure out how much money do we want to spend? What's that number? And do we renovate, or do we do all new as designed, or even a modification to try to save some money or eliminate some of the offsite improvements, whatever that is, to try to sharpen the pencil a bit. But
and I've asked this question before, what about a Butler building or some kind of prefabricated
I
building?
think to Eli's point and the way he explained it is, yeah, initially the cost is it's cost effective, but then once you fit it all out with the heating, the air conditioning, the electrical, couple offices, you know, a break room, bathrooms, you know, you're essentially building a shell, and then you need to put everything in there. And then you can dress it up on the outside if you wanted to do, you know, there's different styles you can do. So it doesn't look like a, you know, an industrial type building. So he said the cost savings, if I remember correctly, were not that substantial with a bunch of buildings.
I wonder what the cost savings would be, because we're talking about $23,000. I mean, and whether or not we want to spend $24,000 on,
I think the renovation is gonna be your probably lowest cost, because you've got existing garage floors that you can salvage, existing footings, existing structure. There's one side of the garage that needs, they had paved it years ago, just to, I think it was like gravel, you know, back in the day. And that would have to get, you know, done appropriately, but it's not a huge sum of money. But yeah, you're gonna be left with a shell. You're doing a gut renovation. And then you just put
and
everything in.
sometimes that can be more expensive than tearing it down and rebuilding it, and that's the problem. Once you start taking those walls down.
It's a lot like if you were redoing your house.
Yeah.
You know, at what point do you say, let's just take it down to the foundation, or take the foundation out altogether and put in a more energy efficient?
That's
you know,
my
structure.
concern about
So-
that. You know, what are we gonna find when we start to take it apart?
Wasn't that kind of study done already?
Yes.
2017.
17 before
Starting
the
in 15, it
18
was
decision.
finalized in 16 or 17. Kaplan bought DeSantis, I think it was. They gave us like 3 options with different renovations and replacements. Those costs are far lower than what we have today. And everything that came out of that report, even meeting with that architect and their mechanical professionals, said, you know, you guys have to, you gotta do a replacement. It's just not, you know, at this point in time. But
So
The
this
thing is,
is
the
what we were
building-
asking Eli to do again.
I think Eli, hadn't Eli just come out with a number that he said he thought if we built the building in the same place it was now, new construction, he could do it without the site work and it would be 30% less? Wasn't that the
he had
number?
thrown something around, yeah.
What was the number? I'm just throwing that out there, so.
So that would
You can
obviously put you
visualize
guys
it.
out for a little bit, but it would get trailers or something like that. And
Yeah, we
Yeah.
would make it work, whatever we have to do. I'll work from home.
That seems to be the most
that works.
sensible to me.
I think we're obligated to explore renovating the DPW.
Well, do we have some direction to, you know,
On the proposal, I don't think of it as an architectural assignment. I'd like to continue to work with Rich on scoping what really needs to be addressed.
I think
I think it's-
scoping, we have a pretty good handle on. As part of this proposal, though, he was also looking at that storage building, what
Mhm.
options we have for that. So, because once again, we want that to fit into the character of the neighborhood as well.
Yeah.
let me just see where everyone's at on this, Councilman Coon.
I'm kind of thinking, put it as an alternate and see what happens. At least if we say no, we have a number. We don't have to like estimate anymore or anything like that. Just figure out what it is.
Thank you, Councilwoman Koch.
I don't know. I really don't. I just feel like we're just going around in circles all the time.
I would like to see that old report. Rich, do you have a copy? You know, like maybe for everybody.
I read it. It's a building assessment. It's a physical assessment of the both of the facilities, and it is useful to read it. And it's a short read. It doesn't give us much guidance at this point. The numbers are found out and the buildings have continued to age, but I think no matter what, based on what Rich has reported tonight, even if we did say this is an architectural assignment and we need to hire an architect to help assess it, his proposal as it's written doesn't reflect the important information that Rich has found, which should significantly change his fees. Because he doesn't have to do as-built, he can work from drawings, he's gonna have information to go on it. When he prepared that proposal, we didn't have. So the proposal as written doesn't match up with reality.
No, he assumes in
He has
his
several assumptions.
proposal that we will furnish a hard copy of the complete set of working drawings of the existing building. I mean, I think before you get there, though, you kind of have to ask yourself how you feel, and I think you've answered how you feel, Tracy, but
Mhm.
how you feel about renovating a four-year-old building,
Almost 50.
50-year-old building versus replacing it. I mean, I think that's kind of,
I think for me, and perhaps I'm repeating myself, but I'm feeling incredibly frugal. I think the most prudent thing to do is.
but is it the most
Yes.
frugal?
Yes.
How, but why?
Well,
And I don't know the answer, right? Because you're saying spend $23,000
No.
to find out.
I'm not saying that.
Right, I understand you're not, but your path assumes you go with the Tracy Cole method of let's not work with Eli, let's us figure out what needs to be done here.
Well, we're gonna work with Eli. We're gonna certainly move forward with the PD and everything. So
No, I mean for this.
for that, I
specifically.
just don't think it's relevant.
I don't think there's, there might be a few different solutions here that are all good solutions. My only concern about what you're saying is, it seems like you want Rich to do more work to get us so that the fees aren't as high.
I think you.
But I'm worried, my worry in that plan is where are the interest rates gonna go over time? Are we gonna lose money on whatever project we end up doing based on the cost to borrow money? So is it the savings on 23,500, I don't know what that'll end up being, is our, the additional cost and interest greater than that? That's my concern there, and I'm just gonna go back, having nothing to do with either of those things, that I was very adamant that if DPW didn't move forward as it was presented by Eli, I like the idea of also waiting, bidding it out to wait to see what the cost is, but that also pushes back fixing this building. The building needs to be fixed, like immediately. And that's, we can drag our feet all we want, but we gotta, and that's why I said I think there's a few different solutions that work, and we're all trying to get to the right one. We gotta get there. So,
Yeah, well, so I go back to the question of whether you want us, if you pursue what Eli has presented, which Tracy's saying there's another way. I think that's an interesting thought, and I support that. If we don't have to spend money to figure out if we should renovate or replace, I'm on board for that. As long as it doesn't take us 6 months.
Right.
But I don't want to spend money to get to the renovation cost and say, geez, that's really close to the replacement cost we ought to replace, and now we've just wasted time and money.
Agreed.
I don't want to say waste, but spent, I should say.
Right. We just talked about an option that was 30% cheaper. Was that
that's building within the existing footprint of new building, exactly where the building
putting
is
a new
currently.
building exactly where the old building is?
Currently.
So the,
Yes.
the building that Eli designed for DPW, would that fit on the, so he would have to go back and
Yes.
redesign,
Yeah, we asked him to put the building in a different location
I know.
on the site.
Right,
That's what we
but-
asked him to do.
I
And that's we can't just move that building to where the current building is. What's suggested is that we do a Butler building or some lower cost building exactly where it is. There's far less engineering. That's where we save all the money, is the site engineering. It's not in the building, because the building is gonna cost what the building's gonna cost. And it's roughly gonna be the same amount. We might be able to take some windows out. We might be able to cheapen the look of it by using cheaper materials, but for the most part, the building's gonna be about the same cost. Because the plumbing, the electrical, the
Right,
heating, the
right,
cooling,
right.
the concrete, The materials
Right.
cost roughly gonna be the same. We're just going back to the drawing board and asking him to replace the current building in its current site.
The cost
Current spot.
savings would be, the additional cost savings would be in the same spot, you could use the existing electrical, sanitary, you know, the gas lines, you don't have to move the generator, you can work around all that and just bring that all into that new building.
I don't know.
The unknown is, and he even has it here, is the environmental remediation.
Mhm.
What's involved with these other options, whether we renovate or we do a Butler building. If we do a Butler building, my guess is we're doing a complete tear down. We're gonna excavate out the existing slab and foundation of the structure as it is today. And there was some stuff found underneath, so we have to deal with that.
To answer your question though, Betsy, why did we go this route?
Mhm.
We wanted to tighten up the site, reduce the site, the impact of the site, and make it smaller. And that's why we moved the building over to keep the existing building in use while we built the new building, and then at the end of it, I'll make the whole site smaller. And then create some parking near the ball fields. And that's why we had that parking lot adjacent to it. So that all came from the community, from the feedback we got from the
Right,
community.
right.
So the cost is unbearable, I understand that. And now we're going back, and we're either gonna try to fix this building which Rich has never done. So we can't ask Rich to fix a building of this type to bring it up to code when he's never done a thing like that.
Right,
That's not what he does as
right.
an
No, I'm
engineer.
not suggesting that.
It's gonna cost us something to go back to the drawing board, though. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Right, but do we, you know, pay $23,850 just to find out? Or do we put that $23,000 towards keeping the building in its same place and reducing our cost by 30%?
Understood. And I can get behind that.
And I would rather do that as long as Rich feels that his department can handle the construction.
Well,
Working in
it's that,
trailers.
and
But you'd
what's-
have to do that anyway, probably.
To the mayor's point too, what's the time frame? If we authorize Eli tomorrow, said, all right, we're going Butler building, you know, what does he need? 90 days? I have no idea. And then obviously there's some public hearings and interaction that we would need to do from the community side with that option. The roof is my main concern.
Yeah.
You know, we've got 10 to 12 employees in there every day, you know, hanging up their jackets, you know, eating their lunch. We have a mechanic in there fixing the cars. We've been holding the line as long as we can. And I wish there was some magic that we can do up there to, you know, even if we spend $5,000 to fix some of the roof, we've got leaks everywhere now. It's coming from everywhere. And it's an old insulation type, and now that stuff's fallen. We had a huge piece come down on one of our newer trucks a couple weeks ago. So that's concerning.
Can the building handle a new roof? I mean, is the
Yeah,
building
sure.
structurally sound enough?
Here's the challenge, here's the only unanswered question. I have a design from 8 years ago, and I think if we go back and listen to what Eli said at the last meeting, there may be some additional rot or something going on, you know, in the ceiling joists or the rafters
That's my
beyond
point.
what a complete roof tear off and putting a roof on. They might pull off that roof and find some stuff, you know,
Right,
that we would have to deal
I'm
with.
concerned about
Especially
that.
when it's
Do
been
you have the
exposed for so long.
ability to
probably.
inspect that? Do you
During
have,
construction,
or just maybe
pre.
Brad's pre-construction, go up there and inspect that?
it falls within my wheelhouse, yeah.
No,
It's, the nice thing, it's all exposed, so
Mhm.
it's not an invasive type inspection. You can get, you know, you can get up there and take a look to see. You can check for moisture, you can
Mhm.
check for rot.
Yeah,
We also have a termite issue in the building that we discovered. I mean, the list goes on and on, so. Anyway,
Councilman Rodriguez.
I actually think, Betsy's idea is a good one. I do think that, $23,000 to get us to a point where we can compare a legitimate renovation of the building to a solid bid that we get back in conjunction as an alternate to the police department, gets us 2 data points, and we might go with the 3rd data point, which is what Betsy was suggesting before, which is a Butler building in the same place, which is what we might arrive at, because the 2 options might, one, getting a 60 or 48-year-old building to live another 20 years might not be worth it, and it might be too expensive to live with the alternate option. So I think we bid it out as an alternate. There's no cost in that to me. I also think that $23,000, we can knock $5,000 off of that somehow, because we've gotten, a lot of hidden information that wasn't available when the proposal came out. We saved the homeowner 19 cents a month in this town, because I just looked at the numbers. I don't know if the 19 cents is worth it. Let's put a pin in this and move forward with it, in my mind. But if we want to drag it out, we can drag that out too. We've done that for 6 years since I've been here. I do think we have an obligation to the employees to do something, and I think that the town would support it.
Thank you. Councilwoman Chris McKee.
I think that sounds like a reasonable plan. If we can, if we can bid it out, again, as long as it doesn't cause any sort of significant delay, if the plans are ready to be put to bid. I don't see that has any harm in it. I also support not spending money to do some sort of feasibility on this. But I'm also comfortable if we say, you know what, if the building's too old, there's too many problems. We should really look at just replacing it in place. But again, that would have to be in comparison to whatever that bid comes back at. If we wanted to be able to really say what is the savings here. I don't know, so we're kind of operating in a little bit of a vacuum, information vacuum here, which is.
Councilman, you said 3 things: bid out,
Yep,
spend money on the feasibility study at a lesser amount.
yep.
What was the
And the
third?
3rd one was to, if we find that these 2 options are not something we want to go with, we create, it's the Betsy plan, create the Butler building in the place where the current building is. You like the Betsy plan? Is that a good moniker?
We have 3
Betsy building.
plans, but-
Well, only because we have 2 people on the same page here. I'll turn over here and see if how you feel about
I think that's a plan.
Councilman McKee.
In ranked order. Lava pitch over the plate, let's put out the bid, see what happens. I think we should kind of at least pick an either or on the Eli study or the Eli cost to move the building. I don't know if we can have all 3. I'm kind of leaning towards the Butler building idea and get a number from Eli. See what it would cost to keep the building where it is.
But replace it.
Without the feasibility study.
Without feasibility.
So bid out, and then
Meanwhile,
concurrently, how much is a Butler building?
I think I,
You move to that
yeah,
plan?
I'm moving to that. plan.
Okay.
Yeah,
So you don't want
I'm
to fix the
afraid.
building as
No,
it is.
you know what? We've all done work on our homes, and it always ends up being a lot more expensive than you initially thought it would be. And now you've got a building that is way past its expiration date, and now you want to add 20 years to it. It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to the residents that we would put all that money into a building that we're hoping that we can get 20 years out of. Whereas we start from the beginning and we use a Butler building and we save 30% and we keep it where it's supposed to be. Now they have a 40-year building.
I support the new Betsy plan.
Bid out, and then feasibility on Butler Building.
Well,
Councilman Cole, I'm sorry.
I'm just confused. Is it a feasibility study on the Butler building, or is it,
Might
there's
just
no
be, how much does it
feasibility?
cost?
Just.
What does it cost?
Upstairs, yeah.
Right.
I think we're asking him to firm up the 30% ballpark. He threw a ballpark out there. We're just asking him to firm that up. It's not a, got it.
30% was, but that was for a regular building. It wasn't for a Butler building. But as I recall, he said a Butler building would end up being about the same cost as a regular building. So,
And that's okay too.
okay.
I'm just interested in saving as much as we can, and if you can work with building a building in the same spot for X number of a year, right? If you're comfortable, that's the most important part of it, if you can make it work.
Councilman Cole.
I think we're a governing body in need of options, and which I completely relate to. I don't think we can afford to spend a lot of money to identify those options. To me, it wasn't clear that it wouldn't cost us anything to put the building as it is currently designed out to bid. There'd be some cost to the borough to do that. Did I misunderstand?
There's some, it's all incorporated in the P8, so that project, if we decide to go out to bid on P8, is gonna be,
Right.
it's all
the
incorporated,
same.
all the plans are all. He even mentioned that if we're not bidding Public Works, he's leaving all that in the drawings, because the 200 pages, it would take them a month to go through and
I
get
see.
rid of all the DPW stuff.
I see. So
Or
that's a
even to
given,
go in, sometimes you put an X through everything and you
Yeah.
say NIC, not in contract.
right?
I think he was just gonna do a one page. It says anything that's referenced to Allen Street DPW is not part of this bid.
Mhm.
But if we choose to bid it, then it's just all one package as is.
Hmm.
The specifications, everything's all in there, everything. It's done.
So that project is fully designed, stacked, and
Like
bid documents.
98%.
Well, just
We've been
for
in
the
a- we've been in
record,
a
it would
holding
be good
pattern
to have
because-
some of that information before the governing body, right? That's historical now, but moving forward, that's something to keep in mind. So it seems to me we need options, which is understandable. And I don't really feel comfortable spending a lot of money to identify those options. And so I'm willing to entertain a revised proposal from Eli if he wants to, if anything that you have identified, and I certainly know how useful that information would be. And if that would modify his proposal, then I would like to see his proposal. I do think we should know what a Butler building costs. You know, honestly, more information, the better. Good information in will lead to better decisions coming out. So is that helpful?
Yeah, I think it's helpful, and I also would recognize that it sounds as if at least 4 members of the governing body is for this plan. The direction we could give is to bid out the DPW as it was designed originally,
Alternate.
as
Yep.
an alternate, and then at the same time, we'd like to see what the cost of a Butler building in the same footprint as the current building would cost. Is that an
Yes.
accurate assessment of the wishes?
Um,
I just think one, you go ahead, Jason.
what
Next
we're
is
talking
one
about
recommendation.
what we're talking about is basic industry per square foot costs. Like, this isn't something that Eli should draw or study or analyze. We want, you know, it's gonna have 3 bathrooms, 2, and give us the per square foot. He can figure that out using some
Fairly
industry
quickly.
standards pretty quickly. So that's what we're asking for, just to clarify.
Can I just make a suggestion on the bid? PD, obviously, and the storage building is grouped in as one, and then add alternates in the order of the parking lot on Allen that we kind of were talking
I
about
think it's
earlier
all
for
in there.
additional parking. That be separate, and then thirdly, the DPW building.
We'll have to talk to the site engineer. I think he had all the site work. Typically on projects like this, you bid all the site as a lump sum.
Okay.
I don't know how much effort it would be to peel that out.
Okay. And to be clear, I'm sorry, you know what I think
Clears it up.
I didn't say, sorry.
I would leave
That I
it as
don't
is.
want to abandon the possibility of renovation. Which was very helpful and pointing out that at the end of the day, that really might be the most cost-effective way to right the building and keep the operation going in a safer, more efficient manner. And I don't want to lose that. So, you know, we're talking about Butler, we're talking about bidding out the potential renovation, although a very old, very problematic building, it still might be a worthwhile alternative.
But that's gonna cost $23,800.
I don't think so. But well, we don't know. Let's see what
Well,
his
he
request.
has it all listed here.
I know.
Okay, I just, the only other one I want to touch on very quickly is Bicentennial Hall, only because I guess there's a grant that was out there. You know, as Teresa wrote, it doesn't seem like there was interest from the governing body, that's her word. In moving forward with the ADA upgrades, I just want to make sure everyone understands that without those ADA improvements, the chances of this becoming public meeting space are severely challenged. But that being said, I realize we're putting meeting space over by community center, but if we ever wanted to host council meetings at Bicentennial Hall, that does make it slightly more difficult. So.
So I think we should be talking about Bicentennial Hall. I think those are not the only impediments and challenges to making that a public meeting space for meetings like this or planning or zoning board. I think as it exists, it is a viable public meeting space depending on the intent and the use for that meeting. I think the acoustics make it a real challenge for meetings like this. We had our one council meeting there. We also talked about the layout and design of the room, things like that. I think the ADA upgrades are one of the components that we need to be considering. If memory serves me, the projected costs to do that work was 400, 350, 400.
Six.
Yes, I think it's closer to 6.
Oh,
That was for both.
my memory is very foggy on this.
Well, Meg, I think that they had it broken up by total for
Okay.
ADA improvements, and then the additional 250 or 3, maybe it was split about in half, I kind of
For
forget,
other,
for the acoustic study and,
the parking
Fit
lot.
out the parking lot,
yeah.
soup to nuts.
Is there a way to carve out certain elements that we could implement and do some of those upgrades so we don't forfeit the grant number 1, but would also drive down the cost number 2? Or is it all wrapped up in, this is how you put the grant app in, we're done?
The way Teresa's answered
Rich, you're
that,
shaking your head, yes.
yeah, the way Teresa's answered that in the past has been that they applied for the grant with a very specific set of plans. And the grant was provided based on those plans. But
Was
I
presented
don't
that
have
way as
any-
well to the whole group,
yeah,
all the other municipalities. And voted that way.
we can ask her the question again and phrase it a different way. Maybe we'll get a different answer, but that's the way it's been answered the few times we've asked it, so.
Yeah. So it's all or nothing. And so then to the borough, the tune of $600,000, the grant is 174, so we'd be on the hook for 400 change.
So I'm just bringing it up in case there was some sort of push to move forward with it. Some, you know, just because the grant is out there, she's pointing out also that regardless of this other work, the building's still in need of some repairs that are going to total approximately $65,000, but I think that's a separate conversation.
Mhm.
So, good to move on?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. Anyone else have anything on that facilities discussion? We're good? Good. All right, so let's move on to organization chart. Tracy and Meg, this is something they've been working on in communications. Take it away.
So this represents, we were at several meetings. You have in front of you what we consider to be sort of a final draft in that it's here for you tonight. Take home, look at it, think, and talk to people. You might have some input, thoughts or questions, all welcome. This was our attempt to really get a snapshot of the structure of government as it is. And I'll walk you through it real quick to give you like I already see something. We have Fairhaven governing body, and we don't have the names of the elected officials in the box. So we worked on this a lot, and yet there's still things that we can see that might need to be improved. But big picture, the dark blue, which you'll see 4 rows of dark blue, these are all volunteers. The maroon indicates staff. The yellow boxes between these are just titles to show you that there are council committees. And they're each labeled here. There's 8 of them. You can go into it if you want. Then there's the administrative layer, including our key administrator, top administrative team, Teresa and Allison. And then our departments, which there are 9. And just to pause here, you'll notice that when you take the time to look at it a little more closely, there are a total of 9 departments and 8 council committees. It's the council committee situated between the governing body and our key administrative team department heads. These, for the most part, are council committees align with our departments within the borough government. You'll see outreach and communication. Primarily we work with Allison, Betty Ann, and Teresa. Same thing you'll find with finance. The key staff people on finance work with the finance council committee. The same is true of personnel. So you'll see an alignment between the departments, generally speaking, an alignment between the departments and the committees, council committees. Then on the bottom half, this is where you find our boards, commissions, and committees. They should all look familiar to you. And the orange is specified and is discrete and separate in that is our first responders. The orange indicates they have their own organizational structure. They are their own entity, yet they are also part of the overall government of Fairhaven. I did some calculations I do want to share with you. Oh, sorry, and the light blue is just to indicate just a somewhat discrete and somewhat separate as our borough historian and our Navasinn Municipalities Committee, that they are somewhat different than our other boards, committees, and commissions. But we, for the most part, you'll find like with like within each of these rows. The only workflow suggestion that is embedded in this document is that the administrative team and department heads work with the governing body through the council committee layer, which is situated between our administrators and the governing body itself. So on a day-to-day basis, and we all know we're on these council committees, Teresa, Rich, also will work with the council committees to advance plans on a department level on an operating basis, not just at council meetings. So let's see. There's a total of 7 members of the governing body. You know this, it's about 100 volunteers within this organizational chart across all these different entities. And on a monthly basis, that represents 345 volunteer hours a month. And annually, 4,599.5 a year. I was very conservative in these estimates because I know, I mean, we all put in more than an average of 15 hours a month, and that's what I estimated for a council person's role. So plus or minus, certainly for a lot of us, it's a plus. I know how often personnel has to meet, and I'm certain it's significantly more than 15 hours a month. The main thing to take away, let's see, there were a couple key takeaways and then we can discuss if you like. We have, as I mentioned, there's a general alignment. You'll see there's maybe some things are not in here, like There's an ad hoc committee for brush. And they meet on a sort of as needed basis. And that didn't have an obvious location in this, although we recognize maybe it needs to be here somewhere. Same thing about community appeal, while it's a separate, and there's probably more work to do in understanding that connection. But while it's a separate,
They're
501c3,
separate from us.
however, if a sort of, like, say, for example, natural area is on a community appeal and there are donations made, those funds still have to come through the administrative offices in order for them to allocate those, to spend that money. So yes, it's separate, but how do we identify that? It's homework for a later time, but just as a side note, community appeal 68 years old. And next year, I learned all sorts of interesting things. Next year, Be a Good Neighbor will be 20 years old. Cool little tidbit. While we have a planning and zoning department, we have a land use committee that doesn't do land use being a subset of planning. It's an interesting takeaway that we don't actually have a committee, or we could if we expanded land use. This, again, one last note, it does not account for like all the other volunteers, if you're in the Board of Ed, the PTA. I don't have numbers for everybody in that orange box, and we know that's a 75-year-old organization with a rich history and just tons of volunteer hours. Same thing with the Fairhaven Business Association. There are a lot of us that aren't here, but the takeaway for me is we have a very robust volunteer community of people who love to pitch in. And I just think it's kind of an embarrassment of riches. And I love to make sure everyone knows about it. Meg, did you want to include something?
I think you covered almost everything. But Fairhaven runs on volunteers and an amazing staff, obviously, but we have a lot of volunteers who are helping to support and run our community, and it's incredible. So I'm really grateful for that.
Did you call the Duncan people and steal their slogan?
I mean,
Or did they steal ours?
Thank you to the communications team on putting this together. I know you guys put a lot of work into this. Looks great.
yeah, so if anybody has comments or feedback, we welcome it. This is a good mechanism that we can post on the Borough website once it's in finality, so that people can understand a little bit how the Borough is set up and operates.
When did communication become a department?
The beginning of the, well, no, it was there before.
It was already there.
Last year,
The communications committee started in 2017,
yeah,
but to become more.
but it was much more low key.
Correct.
And now does it have?
It's Meg and me, Allison, Teresa, and Betty. Yeah, it's a
And the mayor.
council committee.
It-
Of course, and the mayor is on
Right.
all, I don't know how he does it, but he's on every committee.
You said 9, I missed that.
Oh,
Now
are you
it's
talking
like-
about this?
Yes, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, there is none.
Well, technically, you're talking about the department or the committee?
The department.
So is it 8?
It's 9.
It's 9, but. Yeah.
It might not fit.
Then we might need to edit that. It might be 8, and then there isn't a separate department for communications. She's the director of communications. which
Falls
is-
under administration.
That's what I thought. I didn't know if it was
Clearly
like a
that-
separate.
That could be edited
um,
to fit somewhere.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, on 2022 tax bill insert, I'm not sure there's much to discuss here. I just wanted to make the comment that residents can anticipate their tax bill in mid-July. Included in it will be information that you'll find helpful in interpreting where your tax dollars are going to.
Trace, I think, was looking to see if you guys wanted anything in addition. Like, we've done the brush schedule, the zones. There was something that you thought.
Well, maybe we could add the QR code so people could scan it and sign up for cross and contact. That's an easy one to.
Just think about it,
Okay.
because the tax bills are gonna be going out.
I love the pie chart.
Maybe,
You guys
maybe
started
we'll,
doing a few
maybe
years ago.
we'll drive that through communications to.
Sure.
Okay. Next is brush grind purchase order. Rich, can you
Yeah.
take us through that, please?
We put together a request for quote, which was due June 17th. We got 3 quotes. There might have been a spreadsheet in your packets. The way we structured the quote, we put the cost per cubic yard if they used a maximum of the 100 cubic yard truck, which is a large truck. That included a quote line item for a maximum size of the smaller truck, which is about a 55 yarder. And then we've got some additional logs and tree debris that needs to typically be trucked out, so we wanted to get a lump sum price for that. Having said that, we got a quote from Mazza, Atlantic, and Britain. And as we anticipated, the quote for the smaller trucks is higher. It's approximately $2.25 a yard higher. We anticipate 4,000 cubic yards to be ground at the site. Or grinded, or whatever. If you do the math, that's pushing about a $10,000 increase to use smaller trucks. The reason we put this on workshop is we need to do a purchase order and get this moving. And we wanted to kind of, now we have a pretty good gauge on where the pricing is because of the way we structured the quote, so you guys can see, the difference. We were gonna move forward with doing a PO for the smaller trucks. So that's what the number would be, and that would go to, I believe, Atlanta. So his price was the same, whether he uses a large truck or a smaller truck, $8 a yard.
And when I looked at this, I thought, check, but it seems to me spending the extra money it's good to know what the cost difference is. I wouldn't want to compromise the neighborhood safety. I do question what the duration of grinding would be, that which isn't a comparison to last. I'm just wondering, do you think it's going to be longer because of the amount that's there?
The amount to be ground up
Probably.
is the same amount.
Okay.
The estimate is 4,000 yards. That's just an estimate.
But like it has been in the past.
So whether you use large trucks or
I know.
smaller trucks, it's really just the haul out, the duration of the haul out and the number of trips. But then obviously the other factors that come into play with the benefits of how you look at it.
Do they indicate anything about timing? I would think that the larger trucks would be faster, we get the material out more efficiently. But is there, are we talking a couple of days? Are we talking a couple of weeks?
Well, if you're looking at 4,000 yards and you're using 100 yarders, that's 40 trips.
Mhm. So versus 75.
We've done it
or
both
80.
ways, obviously, so we kind of know the operation.
Right.
The grinding is going to be the same.
Right.
It's a matter of, and we did add some parameters here too, in the actual description of work here that we talked about, some of the, based on the school schedule, coordination with PD, even the months and time of year, obviously if school's in session or not in session, the work time. So that plays into it a little bit, but the small trucks seem to work pretty good the last time, but there is an added cost. So that's something we want to bring to your attention. If you do the PO,
I was
it's
wondering the
$9,000 to
brush fire
$10,000.
stuff, but the general take is the smaller trucks are better,
We
right?
tried the smaller trucks. The feedback we got was they weren't small enough. I don't think we can really go with much smaller trucks because that'll just drag it out 2 months rather than 6 weeks or however long we went
Whatever it
the
was.
last time. My question, I guess, is when do you plan to do the next haul away.
If we cut a PO tomorrow or whatever it's gonna be this week, we would contact Atlantic Tree immediately and get them mobilized as soon as.
So you want to do this?
Assuming they don't have other work in other towns, that, you know, they need to finish up.
And the reason I asked that is. you know,
July. Think of
There
July.
is no school schedule at that point, and it just is a different scenario. And I'm not advocating for gigantic trucks, because when those gigantic trucks were in our neighborhoods, it just felt like it was too much. We had just jumped over some chasm into some crazy town.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Have we done the summer before?
Yeah.
We have.
Mhm. Yes.
And how did it go?
Well, this was when we had rumps in, this is when we had large
More
trucks, this is
material.
when we had, we had 3x the material. And so we were doing 3-4 grinds a year rather than 1 or 2. This is a much more manageable situation.
The
Yes.
benefit too is Atlantic has worked for us
Yeah.
many, many years. They helped us out through Sandy. They basically put one employee who drives the truck, loads the truck, drives the truck out.
Okay.
He's not using third party where some of the other bidders,
Sub it out.
they sub out, the trucks don't know the neighborhood.
That's what got us into.
They
That's
have,
what
they have a
gets us-
set
that's
route,
what gets us
yeah, they
caught,
were
yeah.
queuing, yeah.
Can I just ask, I'm sure there's an answer for it, but why we don't just wait 2 additional months? Does it become too much material in there to do it during
We're-
school and the kids are in school then?
We're getting close to capacity.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we probably should have gotten this done earlier in the
Before the
spring, but
fireworks.
we held
Yeah.
off, yeah.
Yeah.
Normally we would get it
Year,
done before
done before fireworks.
before fireworks in the past,
Um,
but
We're talking about the next phase on Third Street. When do you anticipate that starting?
oh, for the road job,
Yeah,
we need to have that bid and awarded by November.
oh, okay, I'm thinking there'd be some kind of road work going on that those trucks
Well-
would be crossing over.
But that's a good point. Should that be done before school starts?
Which project?
Third Street.
Well, you're
We can't get it, it's not feasible. It's
No.
July next week, or July this Friday.
Come on, Rich, pull
and,
strings.
You're close to capacity.
Yeah, no, we'll have to figure out how to deal with that and getting kids to school.
Rich, how does that?
But let
I'm
me,
sorry, go ahead.
that's okay. No, let me just ask one other question. Some of the feedback that I received off of the last grind is that the smaller trucks took a different route. I don't know the purpose behind the different route, but that the different route was,
Was that Cedar?
I believe
Yeah.
it was, that it was counterproductive because it was crossing Third, going down Cedar, whatever it might be. So I would just encourage, and I forget what the deal was, but I think that we bidded.
Chief find
No,
out?
The
way.
chief organized
We
that.
coordinated
Right.
that and the driver knew if school was either going in or out of session, that they were gonna sit there and wait.
Yes, I do remember that being part of the deal. Yeah, I would just say we should double check to make sure that's the most effective or efficient route. I think the smaller trucks make a lot of sense. I understand it takes a little bit longer. It's costing us a little bit more money, but the overwhelming feedback and having personally witnessed 8 18-wheelers on Hendrickson and the site at one time, it is terrifying.
Yeah.
So
How long, you said it's almost at capacity, how long does the entire grind take? So that it's cleared out?
Typically, they can get the tub grinder in there and have it all ground up, within 3 days or so. It's quick.
Is the carting.
It's-
It's-
Is there-
Oh.
is there a
it's
thought that we wait until rec camp is over, or is it better while rec camp is in session? I forgot the times of rec camp, but the kids are biking to and from rec camp daily, so that might be a consideration that we're able to tweak.
We're getting close to being at capacity. We also get a monthly inspection by Monmouth County Solid Waste. So we do our best to hold the line there. We've done it all months throughout, my time here. there's, whether school's in session, camp's in session, it's what's the balance? What's that balance?
Yeah, Betsy, how long does rec camp go? 6 weeks?
Yeah, it ends like early to mid-August.
No.
Before then,
Does it
I
go that
think
way?
it's the end
Well,
of
it's
July.
6
I
weeks.
started today, I think it goes till the end of.
Yeah, but it's 6, so it's, I think it's the first week in July, it's 6 weeks, so it was a week, it started the 27th. And then you have July. So it's early July, early August, if it goes into.
The other
Do you have
thing too-
800 do we have 800 students versus however many are camp? I feel like doing either camp is a
Right.
lot smarter and safer, because if we do this in August and it bleeds into September, then we've got hundreds and hundreds rather than, I think, a handful.
And you're getting into hurricane season too, so we could have a crazy storm.
Yeah, I would,
Yeah.
I
and
would
brush
push
is
it out
all
if we can avoid it.
The other part of it is, we like to get it cleaned out. We don't do brush collection in August, so that allows us to get into that site and do a little cleanup and
So my,
massaging, when it's empty.
yeah, my suggestion then would be that we have either some sort of restrictions or just some sensitivities to the travel time to and from camp.
Yeah. Maybe
Just because I
just-
know a lot of these kids are doing it themselves.
We'll talk to chief.
Okay.
And,
Yeah,
He's
I'm
pretty
just
good
really
about
sensitive to
having
that.
and like I said, Atlantic
Yeah,
is a local vendor, they know Fairhaven.
I know,
They-
that's very helpful, yeah.
Or my last question on this is, I know we restrict the hours when school's in session. Are the hours restricted during summer too?
Yeah, on the quote. Hours of operation to be set by the borough, subject to change based on school schedules and police chief recommendations. July and August, we have 8 to 3:30. And then during school, we have 9 to 2:30. So we do have that subject to change, so we can, we can massage that.
I think that would be important.
Is there anything called out on the route there, Rich, or no? In the bid.
Nothing specific regarding the route. But, it was really just scope of the work. And work scheduled during the month of July on a mutually agreeable date. Work to progress on a continual basis from the date of start to completion. That's the other thing. You don't want them to start the work and then go do another job and come back in a month
No,
and then leave us.
Is that what happened last time?
It happens, yeah.
Happens, yeah, so, and they took the grinder out.
They took the grinder out for repair, I believe, and then they had to bring it back. So,
Yeah, that's
those
a
things happen, but
Experience.
we'll work with chief. We'll look at the route, we'll look at the schedule. I'll coordinate with DJ as well based on camps.
Camp ends July 29th,
All right,
and
so
it
guys,
runs
yeah,
from 8:30 to 11:30.
8:30 to 11:30.
8:30 to 11:30, and this won't affect you, but there's no camp on July 4th.
And the majority of the camps are Fairhaven Fields and then McCarter, right?
It's McCarter and outside the community center.
Okay,
So you really don't want to take that left.
okay.
That third.
yeah.
You good? Good.
Thanks.
Moving along, public comment on agenda items. Please stand and identify yourself by clearly stating your name and address for the record. Please try to limit comments to 3 minutes. Allison, is there anyone from the owl with their hand up?
Mrs. Blazer. Mrs. Blazer, unmute yourself and you'll be able to.
I did that. On the agenda, I have the fortunate or unfortunate position of having gone to a lot of council meetings over the years and being a resident of Fairhaven for many years. And I see that you are creating another position. Please don't do that. The town itself has not expanded. Keep in mind, this is a small town. We don't need all these chiefs. the administration is supposed to work for the residents, not the residents for the administration. Mrs. Berube is an absolute diamond. And if you want to give her a raise, but do not create another position like you did in Parks and Rec. Because if she should leave or retire, you will fill it with somebody else. The list of administrative positions in Fairhaven is far out of proportion for what is needed. Give her a raise, but don't do this position addition, please. She's a lovely person. She deserves it. But please, for instance, tell me, we've got 5 people in finance. Why do we have 5 people in finance? Who is Nancy? Who is Kim? The people we deal with on a day-to-day basis are Teresa, Betty Ann, Allison, and Debbie, basically. And those people take care of things just beautifully. But we have, and back in the day, we were paying so much on engineering and for the DPW and things. We were using T&M engineering, and every month on the bill list, there was a bill for T&M, and people said, oh, we can just do it so much better in-house. We'll have our own borough engineer. We'll have our own this and that. Well, we got a borough engineer to do it at full salary. Then we gave him an assistant at a very generous salary. Then we gave him a secretary. And at this point, I don't see moving from T&M engineering to in-house saved us anything. So please stop adding people to the roster. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth, for your comments. Allison?
Michael DiMaselli.
Hi, everyone. It's Michael. Thanks for everything. I have a question about the DPW and the plan of, I forget the name, but building the building on site. How long would that last? If we were to do that, how long would we get out of that building if we built it on site, a new building on site? I missed that part.
A new building in the same footprint as the old building?
Yes.
I guess Rich is better to answer that, but I would guess 40 or 50 years, right? Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's, I mean, that, what you guys were talking about, that to me, that sounded great, but I just wanted that key element. But thanks for all that discussion. I thought it was really helpful. Good luck.
Thank you, Michael. Anyone else with their hand up?
Let me see, it shows Mrs. Blazer. Again, but- Mrs. Blazer, did you want to speak again?
No, I didn't, Alice. I don't know what glitch
Can't
happened.
still up. Okay, those were the only 2.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to June 13th, special, regular, and executive session minutes. I have a motion to approve.
Motion.
Second,
Allison, may I please have a roll call?
Council members Prisoner Keith,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Koch,
yes.
McHugh,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Thank you. Old business, hearing and adoption of ordinances. Starting off with 2022-08, capital improvement fund, $200,000, McCarter Pond and natural area. Before we open that hearing to the public, does anyone have anything they want to say on that? Questions? Good. Do I have a motion to open the hearing to the public?
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Is there anyone in the public?
There are no hands raised.
No hands raised? Do I have a motion to close the hearing to the public?
Motion.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, may I have a motion to adopt ordinance number 2022-08?
So moved.
Second.
Allison, may I please have a roll call?
Council members Prisoner Keith,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Koch,
yes.
McHugh,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Thank you. Moving along to 2022-09, amend chapter 14 to regulate running bamboo. Does anyone have anything they want to discuss on that before we open public hearing? No? Do I have a motion to open the hearing to the public?
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Allison, is there anyone with their hand up?
No.
Okay, do I have a motion to close the hearing to the public?
Motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, may I have a motion to adopt ordinance number 2022-09?
Motion. Second. That's what do you mean?
It's like an Abbott and Costello. Allison, may I please have a roll call?
Councilmembers Chris Keith,
Yes.
Cole.
Yes.
Koch,
Yes.
McHugh,
Yes.
Burns.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Moving along to new business, council committee reports. I know Councilwoman Neff is not here, you know,
We didn't meet last week. I don't know that we have a report.
Okay. Moving along to personnel, Councilwoman Chris Keith.
Personnel has been extraordinarily busy with some open positions in the borough. Lots of interviews have been taking place, and hopefully that will come to, some of those positions will come to fruition in the near future. And we also have an appointment for Betty Ann Berube tonight on for Director of Communications with an increase in compensation. She does a fantastic job and has been working very hard on communications over the entirety of her tenure here at the borough, and has really taken a significant amount of initiative to ensure that the residents know what's going on. And I think she's done a fantastic job, and I think it's been the will of the past several governing bodies to ensure that there is transparency and communication, and she helps support that effort. It's really important. I know that residents really appreciate it. So and that completes my report.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Moving along to planning and zoning and parks and recreation, Councilwoman Koch.
Thank you, Mayor. Our next zoning board meeting will be on July 7th at 7:15. Our planning board meeting will be on July 19th at 7:30. I believe they are all going back to in-person. Allison, have you heard anything to the contrary?
As far as I know.
Yeah,
that's-
so I think we're all in
If
person.
something changes, but yeah, we'll get that information out.
Good. As far as Parks and Rec, there is no rec meeting this month. However, we are starting our concerts on the dock. The first concert will be on June 29th. The group is the WAG. They're a blues, pop, and rock band. The concerts will all take place at the Fairhaven Docks at the end of Fairhaven Road. The concerts are free of charge. You're welcome to bring your own refreshments and lawn chairs because there is very limited seating there. In case of cancellation due to poor weather, a rec e-blast will be sent out. And to register for the e-blast, if you go to the rec website, you can sign up for them there. And Meg, can you think of anything else to add for rec?
I think that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Koch. Moving along, police, fire, and office of emergency management, followed by engineering and DPW, Councilman McHugh.
Thank you, Mayor. Nothing on the police OEM side. I do have some good news to report that the fair will be coming back, back to its original, meaning the seafood's back.
That's what we all want to know.
The chowder is coming back.
Good.
Right? Clam chowder is coming back. Clam strips, all that good stuff. So,
No.
said that. Oh, I do have a date in case you're wondering. August 26th to September 3rd. So hopefully, segueing into engineering DPW, River Road project is well underway. Rich, I'll give the quick 30,000 foot, and if you want to add any details, feel free. But the short of the long is that we should plan is to have that completely buttoned up, built and paved before the fair starts.
Time for seafood.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so I'll have a nice road to welcome everyone to Fairhaven for Fireman's Fair, which would be great. Right, so
Who should we direct the complaints to then, Mike, if that doesn't get, that not to Josh? We're going
I'm
to
putting
you.
it out there, right?
Okay,
I'm
all
just positive, all right? We're gonna stay positive. It's gonna be good. We'll get back to normal.
I just want to add that I think it's fantastic to see that sort of advanced planning and being sensitive to what's going on in the community, and I kudos to Rich for making that happen.
Right, and along those lines, did have some supply issues with, I think was it sewer drains with Willow and conjunction at Hans and Cooney. They have been ordered though, right, Rich, for that project?
Yes, we've had some experience with this in the last year, but it's getting worse, the supply chain, as it results to especially drainage pipe for whatever reason, trying to secure that, calling every place up and down the East Coast.
Everybody's doing that.
So it's getting worse and worse. It could be up to 9 months. But we'll do the best we can.
We're doing the best we, so along the lines of planning holistically, we try to be cognizant of waiting to school gets out, to finish up that Willow Street. Once that, it's really maybe a 4 or 5 day project, max.
The plan is I've already met with the contractor, Fernandez. They have some additional concrete work to do. We have to finalize the ADA crossing in front of Millwood. The ramp, some of the curbing, and then simply come back and mill and pave. We should be able to mill and pave in 2 to 3 days. And then obviously we're sensitive to the camps. We talked about that at our meeting, our liaison meetings, that the schedule is going to be coordinated with DJ and the chief, and then we'll just have to accommodate drop off and pick up. And I think in our opinion, what the work we're going to be doing out there now is much less intense than what was really going on last year at this time at the school. So, and it's a short period of time, we should be able to get in there and get out of there fairly quick.
That was for Sickles, right now.
I'm sorry.
Sickles.
We knew that. Gotcha.
And lastly, this was kind of brought up before by Councilwoman Koch, 3rd Street Phase 2. It's in the books, well, it's in the works. We're looking to have that out to bid November 21st, I think the date
Has to be
is.
awarded by.
Has to be awarded by November 21st, so Councilwoman Koch and I spoke with Rich. He kind of spec this out in phase 1, so he has to do some minor tweaks and just kind of double check some things, cross some T's, dot some I's. He's looking to have that plan to us, the governing body, mid-August, I think we said, Rich, right? Around that
Early
time.
August, yeah.
So give us a nice window for discussion, for feedback, and
We're looking to incorporate some of the ATP recommendations, and I've also met with David Joy over at the Board of Ed to try to get some feedback from them to try to make this a nice complete project.
right, and just kind of in keeping with that thought process of things not happening. Things happen holistically.
And the
right?
ordinance is on for tonight for the funding, so it's all falling into place.
I think that's it. There's obviously, he's very busy with the micro projects too. Sidewalks, Dartmouth, Ferry Road, Hunting Lane,
Bike lanes,
Bike lanes.
crosswalks,
Ridge Road.
coordination with the county. We're gonna be doing some pedestrian ped button upgrades at Hants Road, which will actually not only improve the usability as a pedestrian, but it'll actually help, from what we're told, the cycle time for that light.
Oh, nice.
So that'll help things on the side street, you know, where maybe you're waiting what seems like a long duration. That new upgrade they're doing will help that. I think it'll be noticeable from what we're told.
That's great.
Yep.
Thank you, Councilman McHugh. Borough Facilities, do you have anything to add?
2 things, just wanted to thank folks for being productive about the brush site and the brush collection and the trucks. I was bracing for, I'm not just kidding, I was preparing for another committee meeting. Doesn't look like we're gonna have that. And then on facilities, the only thing that didn't come up while we spoke earlier, this weekend, we had a scout camp out in Fairhaven Fields, and there was significant vandalism that I discovered at the concession stand. I took some pictures, sent them over to the chief, who sent one of our officers out. And so it's pretty unfortunate that this is occurring. I don't like to live in a surveillance state, but I think at some point, there's so much vandalism that happens in that specific area of town. I do think maybe at some point it makes sense to put some cameras at either end of the building so you can see on all four sides, and maybe that'll prevent some of the stuff that's going on over there. We can see who's going in the bathrooms, who's lighting fires. Just to be very specific, it appeared that there was a 5-gallon drum bucket that was filled with baseball equipment that was lit on fire underneath the roof and soffit, which all melted. Had it caught on fire, the whole building roof line would have been devastated. The whole second floor would have caught on fire. So it's unfortunate, but I do think that we can come up with some solutions to try to prevent this going forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilman. Borough Communications and Community Outreach, Councilman Cole.
Yes, ma'am. So a lot of we've touched on some outreach and communication work, and you, again, just to reiterate, we're open to your thoughts and feedback on the org chart. Some of you may be aware that we have been attempting to find a vendor to upgrade our hybrid meeting capacity. And I feel an obligation to sort of bring this forward to the governing body, sort of as a status and a recommendation. I would like to tell you, I think we have a recommendation. I don't know if we do. And I realize we have 3 proposals, one in-house, one from our in-house IT person, or just south of 5,000, another one from Impact, which is about 5,000. Then we have another one, which feels like an outlier, for about 18,000. And with all this, I can say, and Meg, correct me if you have a different point of view, I don't think we have a recommendation. And although we have a few proposals, I don't know that any one of them is the right thing. And I think actually I'm just not the right person to study these and make and I'm not confident about making a recommendation. So I think I need to either hand this off to somebody with some experience with this area, or we need to find someone who can scope the work professionally and go out and get, I don't know if we need to go to that extent to get proposals, but I can't move this forward any farther than I have. And if someone knows more about AV equipment, control for configurable keyboards and Solstice Pod wireless collaboration. I mean, I just cannot assess this. So open to suggestions, but that is the status. And at the moment, there isn't an official recommendation, but I would really like to move this forward.
Do you want to just circulate the 3 proposals and then meet, like, we'll
Yes,
all take a look at it and give you feedback on it? I mean,
do
I know
you-
Josh is on these things all the time. I'm on these things all the time, so we could probably give you some feedback from.
Yes, actually, I would like to hand it off. Giving me feedback is still going to put me in a position of having to assess this. And I'm saying, I think for us to move it forward efficiently, it should be someone else. I mean, what do you think, Councilwoman?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we don't have to be completely out of the loop. I think that getting some feedback from our fellow council members might be helpful, but I also think I mean, there are also community members who have AV backgrounds who might be able to lend some review, such as Tom Ball from Computer, Dennis Shea. So there are community members who may be able to say, this makes a lot of sense, this makes no sense.
Yes, I think we need, that's what we need. We need somebody to look at this stuff and help us. Yeah,
What about the IT connection we have at the high school?
well, we did get a
He gave us a
proposal.
proposal.
Yes.
Mhm.
Majority of proposals are rolling court because behind here are metal poles. So trying to wire things, you're cutting through walls, you're trying to feed through the ceiling. I mean, they're a little bit nervous about that.
I think two of them had TV mounted, or wall mounted TVs.
Was it up here?
It was on the side.
Sides.
So
Mhm.
Yeah.
Michelle,
The time it would take me to learn this stuff in order to formulate a meaningful recommendation is not good use of my time, and I know that the people who know more than me.
in the facilities committee, we have Michelle, who's been helpful on all the technical stuff.
Yeah,
You know, you can throw those proposals back to the facilities committee and we can take a look at all of them. You're talking about this room specifically.
it is, but this one specifically.
And mention that it might,
did.
if we were doing bicentennial in the hall or having meetings there.
We would
that we could
Lift
relocate.
and move, yeah, okay.
Okay, well then, so I'll circulate it.
Circulate and let's.
And then, why don't I also send it over to Anne Marie or Michelle?
Yep.
Thank you, guys. Let's see. So very quickly, the Environmental Commission, the Shade Tree Commission, and the Fairhaven Field National Area have all appointed an individual from their group to collaborate on what it would mean if Fairhaven were to address invasives and which is a big topic. Obviously, it's a major and spreading challenge. And what's great is though, is everybody recognizes it and they really want to try to do something about it. Trying to get their heads wrapped around it has been challenging. And so that's why everyone appointed, each one of these entities appointed an individual to get together and discuss next steps. And I've been sort of facilitating with the idea that they'd get together, we could talk about what it could look like moving forward, what's the level of commitment they would be willing to make. Do they want to work within silos or meet quarterly, or all this is leading to a request, which is technically they are not an organization. You know, these folks have been appointed by EC, Shade Tree, and Natural Area, but they're going to need a Zoom probably to meet up. And we don't. And for the borough to use a Zoom link, I kind of need your permission for them to have a Zoom meeting using the borough's Zoom account. If I can't get everybody to one meeting and they need to set up a standalone meeting just to figure out how they want to move forward. So what do you think? Does that sound reasonable? I don't know that they're going to form if the first order of business, if they wanted to create another committee, and I'm not really sure anybody wants to do that. The first order of business would be to come here and propose that so that the governing body would then formally acknowledge them. But between that happening and where we are now, there's a need to have a conversation.
They don't want to meet in person.
I think some people are not here for the, like there's vacations and it isn't 3 people right now. I think it's 6 people. And we're just trying to get a date and a time, and Zoom is an option that makes it more possible for them to find a time frame for an initial conversation. We could try to do it in person, but over the summer, people travel and they're not here, but they still want to be able to move it forward. Or we can just wait, but I don't know, nobody seems to be in favor of just waiting.
how long a conversation are you looking to have?
It's probably, initially an hour and a half.
39 minutes? No.
It could be whatever we can, we could keep it short. I don't know what to tell you. It would be an initial conversation. And my thought was to give them something to work from, so they weren't starting from scratch. Like what their goal would be. Here's an example, so you can talk about it, and you could move forward in your silos and collaborate quarterly, or you could form another group, or you could simply communicate in written form. This is really an administrative question, but
Does it have to be public, or do we have to have a moderator on there, or like first one of our secretaries or anything like that?
Well, I mean, is this after the invasive ordinance is, or is this outside of where Greg is working with these?
well, it's
I believe
definitely.
that's part of, the ordinance is part of it,
Oh,
or no?
We haven't adopted,
I'm
but
sorry.
he's been meeting with Shade Tree and Environmental, and they're trying to finalize the invasive.
yeah, you mean, is it the same group?
Isn't that gonna be attached in some way? Because we need to put something forth to address the invasives and then how they're going to.
I think it's a very good point you're bringing up.
I mean, I know you're talking about the logistics of actually pulling down the trees, but that group could also double with filling that list for us.
Yes, the list, and making suggestions and recommendations to the governing body, and it's on the list of kind of things to consider as your action items. I just don't have permission to host a Zoom for them to talk to each other.
But should that be in place before?
Oh, a
Do you
timing
know what I'm
question?
saying?
I mean, I think they
That
could
all goes together.
get started whenever, because it's gonna take them some time to.
I mean, if you're doing a subcommittee of some,
You know, we're spending a lot of time on
I'm
Zoom
sorry.
here. We could do 2 free Zooms, we could do an in-person meeting. I'm sure we can borrow a Zoom from one of the committees if we had to on a one-time basis.
Thanks.
no, we have
Good.
2 accounts. We have the one that our own, and
Okay,
then we have permission to use the green teams if there's a conflict on a date or something.
okay,
So Christie's got all that.
okay, thanks. Oh, small thing, business district. If you haven't been in to Dune and Salt, stop in. They've been here for about 6 months or so. Logan and his family, it's a great shop that has fun things in there on Thursdays. I think they pour a nice cocktail. But they're a great addition to our local business district, and want to officially welcome them and invite you to stop in if you have time. That's it, man.
Thank you, Councilwoman Cole. Moving along to introduction of ordinances.
One moment, Mayor. I'm doing a motion to add a resolution.
Yeah,
No. Oh, for consent
business.
agenda, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
yeah, a motion, I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda to add resolution number 2022-156. Seasonal appointment of part-time seasonal public works laborer Alexander Payne.
Second, all in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you.
So I'll add that to that list.
Moving along to introduction of ordinances, 2022-10, multi-purpose bond ordinance. Before I ask if there's a motion, is there any discussion that anyone wants to make on this?
I have a question. I'm not really sure how to phrase the question, but for example, if we vote on the consent agenda, we can have something pulled out that we'd like to vote on separately. Can you do that in this particular proposal? So for example, I am really not in favor of purchasing the 21 Fairhaven Road property. And I don't want to vote no for the whole ordinance just because there's one item in the ordinance. Can it be bifurcated like that?
You have to go on the ordinance in total. You can't line on it,
Can I
you
make
can go yes or no in total. You can certainly do it, so with a qualified statement, if you want to vote yes, but I still don't agree with X,
Okay.
but it has to be an up or down yes vote.
So Betsy, may
Absolutely.
I? We don't have to spend a single penny in this ordinance.
I understand that.
So,
I understand.
that was my
It's
only
just the
point.
approval of the opportunity to borrow the funds.
Yeah, that's correct.
With the
So-
proposed down payment and all of that.
We should have a preamble to say, I don't plan on spending money on this thing, but I'm gonna vote for the ordinance.
Okay, that's,
Yeah.
and I have a second
And
That
that
question.
way you don't ruin another item with a no.
Right.
For the benefit of the public, can you just explain that briefly?
Sure. When you put a bond ordinance in place, it allows the governing body to borrow money in future, it doesn't oblige us to borrow money in the future, nor does it mean we're borrowing money today, right now, at today's rates.
Right.
So if we wait, and the mayor pointed this out earlier, if we wait 6 months or a year from now to borrow, it might be that rates will move. So we're allowing ourselves the opportunity to borrow, but we're not locking in a rate. If we think it's advantageous to borrow today, then once we put this ordinance in place, then we can borrow against it and we'll get prevailing rates today, rather than 6 months or a year from now. But we're not obliged to do anything in the ordinance. We can actually, frankly, we can retire the ordinance without borrowing anything against it, which is something that we've done in the past.
Right, and if you do not borrow the money for that specific line item, then you cancel the ordinance assets.
Correct.
So, for example, several governing bodies ago, there was a bond ordinance approved for the acquisition of property for whatever that amount was, that never came to fruition.
So we can't.
Right,
Yes.
got canceled. Mhm.
And I have one other question. Well, actually, two. You can, in this bond ordinance, even though you're saying you can spend $1 million on something, you don't have to spend the full million, you could spend 800, but you're limited to the $1 million borrowing, right? Okay, so here's my next question. We had a discussion on Parks and Recreation, and we put a $50,000 line item in. That's what we agreed upon. Originally, it was proposed 100. We had discussion. We brought it down to 50. In this ordinance, it's saying 60. So Allison said that Colleen added some money for soft costs, but everything is a soft cost. We don't even know what we're spending that money on yet. You know, we're improvements to the park. So how did it get from 50 to 60?
I'm not sure Greg can answer that
Oh,
question.
okay.
And from the committee to the bond council who drafted it, somewhere in between there, that the answer.
Let me ask an additional question for you.
Okay.
If the governing body wanted to go to 60 to 50 again, is that something that can be amended once this is voted on? Or
do they just expend the 50,000 that was?
You would probably just spend the 50
Retire
and cancel
that.
the balance.
Okay, so that would be the simplest way to do it.
I'm not the bond council, so I don't want to give
Okay,
you an incorrect
all right.
answer,
Okay.
but I believe you could also amend it to make it wrong too, in lieu of canceling. You could amend later, like you can amend to make them different purposes later, so I believe you can amend the amounts as well.
Usually, like if you're purchasing a piece of equipment, you get a quote, it's an estimated cost. So if it was, $57,000, you would round up to 60. And but if it only came in at 55, we cut a purchase order for 55, and then the rest gets canceled out, and they do that, every so often they clean up the books.
We just did that.
Yeah, it's just that the committee has suggested and ordered
A certain number.
a certain number of upgrades and improvements they want to do to the park. It hasn't even happened yet because we're still waiting on some other numbers. So, I just didn't know why we went from 50 to 60.
Well, I actually think it was the governing body that dropped it to the 50. I think,
It did,
I thought it was the rec committee was actually seeking 100.
it did.
Yes, it was the governing body that ratcheted it
And then we
down.
dropped it to 50.
It was
So my
50,
question is
yeah.
just how it got from
Yeah.
50 to 60.
I think it actually dropped to 25 and then it got bumped back up.
The end result was 50, but I don't know.
Yeah,
All right, can we amend that or not necessary?
I don't know what else they put together that combines with that, like, it's a specialty,
Okay.
obviously, the bond
right.
ordinance. So I don't want to, I'm hesitant to
We
say
can-
yes. I know you can amend it later and then
Yeah.
you cancel later, but I'm hesitant to say yes at this moment because I don't know what else they have. paired with
Okay.
that. That's not
right.
necessary.
I have a different question about the, there's a minimum term or number of years of useful life for something to be in a capital bond ordinance. What is it?
5 years, I believe.
5?
Any other questions?
Oh, yes, I did.
I was just gonna piggyback off of Betsy and ask to have some of these voted on separately, so I didn't vote no on everything. I'll just call it out now, it's 152, I could just vote on that separately.
Well, that, you're talking
No, no,
about.
no, no,
Consent agenda.
Oh,
We haven't
consent,
gotten there yet.
I just
Still
pulled
on
up this, I just pulled up the spreadsheet, for that park line item. It says approved for 2022 plan 50,000, and then it has a 40A:2-20 amount of 10,000. So the total cost was 60.
Is that the trail?
Is the 10,000 for something specific?
Why is that a statute?
Is it
Is that
the
what
trail
that-
maintenance?
Read that statute again, Rich.
The statute is section 20 of the bond law, which says that you can include the expenses. Cost of an improvement of property may include interest on obligations until the end of the fiscal year in which the obligations are issued. Which was 6 months after completion of construction, acquisition, architect's fees.
Right, professional fees, yeah.
Basically says you include the soft costs of the improvement in the cost of the improvement for purpose of advertising the useful.
The
Betsy,
hard cost is 50,000 in the
Yeah.
spreadsheet, and then
my guess is this
What is
relates to either like playground and or multi-purpose wall or any other project that might
Right, 'cause we
require some
prioritize
soft
them.
costs. Right, but we might require those soft costs as opposed to just the actual work itself.
Okay.
So that, maybe, I don't know, I didn't see a communication circulate about that, but that would be my guess, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. It's like both calling.
Councilwoman
It's
Gold?
at section 20.
Thank you.
I have a similar concern about the acquisition of the property. As you know, certainly can envision a park in that location at 20 Fairhaven Road, as you all know. It's my concern. If we were prepared to allocate the additional proper planning and design budget to go along with the acquisition, I'd feel a lot more comfortable about buying it. So as of this moment, we have not set aside the funds necessary to properly plan and design that park. So I am concerned about our capacity to spend that money and our capacity to get it right, which I think is essential at that location. But I have another issue, and this is, it's sort of related to the finance committee, but this has to do with a different type of funding mechanism that I feel we need to explore. It hasn't come out of committee yet, so I'll just say here for the governing body that there's a funding mechanism through the infrastructure bank, which it's not a bonding tool, it's a loan that is at an extremely preferable rate for road work and road improvements. It's at 0.8%. And then after 3 years, it rolls over to a long-term loan, I think in more than 10 years at 0.3%. And if there's any storm drain work associated with it, it can qualify for their water infrastructure financing products. And up to 50% of the principal can be forgiven in that case. And this is actually the case in just a neighboring town of Little Silver. They just did a whole bunch of road work, sidewalk improvements, did some stormwater management stuff. And 50% of the loan, the principal part of the loan was forgiven. I just think this is such an attractive funding tool. I took the time to research it, and I conducted an interview with one of the loan officers at the infrastructure bank. I wrote up a summary of it as I understood it, because I'm not a finance person. And I asked that there be a cost comparison between the option of bonding for our road work versus using the infrastructure loan. And I think our taxpayers deserve that sort of analysis. So maybe it was done and I just didn't get copied on it. It could be that simple, but I would like to know. I would like to know what the difference is between bonding versus using a really attractive financing tool like that. I'm sure it would be different for our staff. I understand you have to open a portal and, you know, it's nothing that they haven't done before for grants and applications and stuff with the state. So does anybody know if any analysis was done on this?
Is that something that we could ask our financial advisor to look at,
Colleen can do that.
our CFO?
But you
Yeah.
asked her, didn't you?
Well, I wrote it up and sent it to the finance committee. And I know, of course, everyone is very busy, and I'm aware of the fact that there's, a lot of moving parts. But I was hoping to hear something before this, because now we have a bond ordinance before us. But the attractive thing of, forget, the rates are attractive. It's hard not to look at, especially given the direction, finance, the cost of money is going generally. But that we can also finance up to 5 years of road work at a time. It gives us a kind of financing vehicle that helps us put some rhythm to our planning and road work with some thoughtful timelines. So I thought there was multiple reasons to look into it.
Yeah, I think there would be multiple avenues to get
That
some
sounds-
answers on this. Financial advisor, CFO, finance committee.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
I
so.
believe,
and if you're saying it's as relates to number 4.
Correct, it's in
Okay,
here,
the
and I
road
want our road work
improvements.
to go forward.
Sure.
But I don't want our residents to pay more interest than they have to.
I'll say two things to that. I
Yeah.
believe Colleen and Teresa, I believe there was an email from Teresa saying that they had discussed in 2018 and she was going to share her thoughts with us. But that was about 2 weeks ago. I don't recall receiving those thoughts. So I think we need to follow up with her and
Okay.
get those. I'm not sure, based on what was said earlier, if that necessarily has to stop this process though. Because
Mhm.
again, if we do go forward here, we don't have to use it, and we could still, I'm assuming we can still finance in the way that you're speaking of, separately.
Yeah, this is just authorizing us to borrow the money, not from.
Right.
a
So
particular
Councilman
entity.
Cole, I'm saying to you, I agree. I think this is something we need to get more information on to see if we can save a boatload of money for the borough. It sounds like a great thing, but I also don't think that that necessarily stops us
Mhm.
from moving forward with this process if the governing body is,
Mhm.
in
Okay.
favor of doing so.
I guess my only question on that would be, my suggestion would be, if we move forward with this bond ordinance tonight, and we do in fact pursue an infrastructure loan for the same work, that consistent with pursuing that infrastructure loan or receiving it, we should be canceling this.
Mhm.
Because if I understand correctly, Greg, perhaps you can correct me if I'm wrong, but once it's authorized in a bond ordinance, a future governing body can act on that authorization.
Mhm.
Yes.
Right, so we would want to be careful to ensure that we pair the two together in taking any action.
Can we do that? Somehow.
Yes, so the point, my point is.
You mean they can move that money to a different project or something?
No, what I'm saying is,
Actually, well, no, because it says 3rd Street and Fairhaven Road.
no, various borough-wide road
But
improvements,
various
including but
borough-wide.
not limited to.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so that would be my concern, is we're over levering ourselves perhaps, right?
We're not
And
over-
maybe not,
We're
right?
not, because we're not borrowing the money.
No, but
we're
you'd be taking a loan,
That's-
so if you
that's not
take the
over-levering.
loan and you bond, I'm saying you do both. For the same, maybe not the same project, but you do both at the same time or two contemporaneous.
I mean, the advance is a separate process. Just so you know.
Yeah,
You have to make a loan application, you have to submit plans, you have to. Functionally, they just make a derivative bond out of the pool of people that borrow the money. It's really just a different financing mechanism. And you get a rate because there's more towns, you issue your own bonds, right? And then you're more risky than 100 towns issuing bonds because only a tranche could default. So that's how they get the better rates. But you have to meet certain qualifications as a town. And you also have to make a loan application typically in advance, I believe, for the project. You know, it's with the plans,
How far in advance?
like at the planning stages of the project.
Mhm.
So,
I
I'm not super familiar with it, but I can tell you that Roosevelt and Allentown, which are small towns like you that I've represented as borough attorney, use the IBAC almost exclusively for all the stuff that they do,
Mhm.
especially for the pipes and the roads.
Mhm.
So it's definitely something to explore, but whether that fits your particular valuation, population, and all sorts of other parameters in the underwriting. I couldn't do the opposite.
Yeah, our default rate is ultra low. Our credit rating is ultra high.
There's sort of the.
And so what we went to your point of getting pooled, we're gonna get pooled with, there's very few, if any, that are higher than us. We're only gonna get pooled with lower credit ratings. And so to that end, you know, I don't know how much of an advantage it might be for us, but we should find out.
I think so, because that,
Yeah.
what he quoted me was half the AAA rate, but, you know, so, look, I don't want to be laboring here, but I would like,
No, I think it's an important point.
I mean, so if you're looking into this, like financing alternatives for your projects, there's also the MCIA, the Monmouth County Improvement Authority, where you can pool with Monmouth County as well as another option to explore if you're looking into this.
great.
Good.
Yes, I think that covers my.
Okay. So no one else has something on this. I have a motion to introduce ordinance number 2022-10.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Allison, may I please have a roll call?
Councilmember Commissioner Keith,
Yes.
Paul,
Sorry. Could you skip me for the moment?
I will vote yes, but I would just like to publicly reiterate my opposition to the purchase of the property at 21 Fairhaven Road, not because we can't afford to purchase the property, but I don't believe that our town has the resources to bring it up to a particular standard, which includes taking down the home that's on the property now, repairing or taking out completely some of the other structures on the property and maintaining the property. I don't feel that we have the resources to do that. So I will vote yes, conditional.
McHugh,
Yes.
Harvey, yes,
Yes.
Paul,
No.
Thank you. Consent agenda. Does anyone have anything first that they'd like to separate from the consent agenda?
I'd like to separate 2022-152.
Okay. Would you like discussion on it or just to vote separately?
I'll just share my thoughts quickly. I think we obviously are spending a lot of money. And we have Teamsters contract negotiations, police department contract negotiations. We have a lot of salary increases happening. And it's kind of like the saying, like death of 1,000 cuts here, 10,000 here, 10,000 there, 5,000 up. I think we just kind of need to get our contracted employees squared away and then, you know, revisit this at another time. So. that's basically-
Okay. Before I ask about other resolutions, does anyone else want to comment on that or? No? Okay. Does anyone else want any discussion on any of the other consent agenda before we move towards a vote?
No, Mayor, just a reminder that we've added 2022-156 appointment, part-time seasonal labor for the summer, Alexander Payne, who was also our B Hotel Eagle Scout.
You built the
Okay.
hotel.
So
Tomorrow? Can we start tomorrow?
first, let's vote on the consent agenda resolutions 2022-149 through 2022-151, and then pick it up again 2022-153 through 2022-156. Do I have
Motion.
Second,
Allison, may I please have a roll call?
Council members Chris McKee,
Yes.
Koch,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
McHugh,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Okay, now, voting on consent agenda item 2022. Well, it's not a consent agenda anymore. Resolution number 2022-152. Appoint Betty Ann Borough, Director of Communications, $5,000. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
So,
Second.
Allison, may I please have a roll call?
Council members Chris McKee,
Yes.
Paul,
yes.
Koch,
Yes.
McHugh,
No.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Thank you. Department reports, May of 2022. Do I have a motion to accept the reports as submitted?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, moving along to go to the borough. Please stand and identify yourself by clearly stating your name and address for the record. Please observe a time limit of 3 minutes. Allison, does anyone have their hand up?
Not at this time.
I have one. On July 4th, I encourage our residents to come out and run the firecracker 5K in Fairhaven Fields. We'll meet at the concession stand, 8 a.m. We'll do 4 laps. And there will be little firecracker trophies for both women and men, girls and boys, and people in the middle there. So
But no actual firecrackers.
there will be no firecrackers.
Mayor, I see Mrs. Blazer has her hand up.
Okay.
I want to discuss Streetscape West.
Okay,
I have been observing because they're getting close to my house, and I've been observing how they've been doing this. And I just want to make a point of saying that the people across the street from me, the woman does not go out that often, and her car is beside her house in her driveway. It has been there for 8 days. If she wanted to get out, she could not get out. Fortunately, she has children who can run errands for her. The point being, nobody seems to be in charge of getting these people here on a regular basis. Today, they were not there. They could have worked this morning before it rained. They have left this space between the curb and the street open like a trench. When they did the sidewalks, and they did do the sidewalks, the cement truck was there. They could have poured this driveway apron and it would have been cured when the sidewalks were cured. But 8 days, I cannot go without my car going in and out of my driveway. I can maybe plan a day, maybe 2 days. I am not leaving my car on River Road overnight. There have been 2 accidents in front of my house over the years. I am not leaving my car there. No way. And since I'm in and out of my house in my car, perhaps 6 or 8 times a day, and sometimes carrying things, carrying items that I could not walk half a block to the PNC Bank parking lot with, I'm more or less confined. So somebody's got to ride herd on these people to see that they move in a manner that gets this thing finished. They're off on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. And some days when it's a perfectly clear day, for some reason, they don't show up. Now, who's in charge of their schedule? Is it the borough, or is it the company, or what?
thank you, Ruth.
Don't thank me, answer me.
Well, it's actually going to be Rich Gardella is going to answer you.
Okay.
So today, obviously, with the forecast, Monmouth County contacted the contractor and said we couldn't work today. Even though, to your point, yes, we could have gotten a half a day in, but it did rain pretty good this afternoon, and you run the risk of losing what you put in. I personally hand delivered notices to all the residents in your block the Thursday or Friday before the last weekend, letting everybody know that we're going to be working within that time frame. I left you a notice. I also obviously knocked on your door with the contractor. I have a meeting Wednesday morning with the general contractor and Lucas to go over schedule to ensure that things are buttoned up in a timely manner. And obviously coordinate the intersection of Hants, because that is a critical part of the project that we need to get done. And, today was just Mother Nature, we couldn't work. And
Why do they,
to your point of pouring the driveway, it's two separate pours. You can't pour it at the same time. The aprons.
why do they not work Fridays?
Because of the escalating fuel costs and inflation, they changed company-wide to 4 10-hour days. So it's less travel time to and from the site, and it's more effective for them. It actually works better for me too, because then it allows me to catch up on Friday. And it also gives the ability where today was a rain out, they will now work Tuesday to Friday, weather permitting. So we'll still get our full 4 days, 40 hours in.
Did you give them any kind of, in the contract with them, any kind of, you have to be finished by date?
In the contract, it gives them the number of days to get the contract completed. But obviously, this is a unique situation where we started the job back in 2020, I want to say. And then, given the water company work and other stuff going on, we've had to make concessions to try to just get it done.
Okay.
We're rounding third, we're almost there.
Okay, when they get to my block, they are across the street. When they get to my side of the street, I need an assurance that it will be done in 2 days. Because I can schedule that way pretty much, but I cannot go without access to my driveway for more than that.
Ruth, we'll make sure that Rich communicates with you offline and you're well aware of the schedule and where we're at. Thank you. Anyone else, Allison? Okay, thank you. Moving along to executive session, formal action will not be taken, 9:35 p.m.
Oh, I wrote down 10:15.
You're back.
Motion to adjourn.
Second? Anyone? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Good night.
10:50 p.m.
I'm stopping at DPW.
And if you read over your things, sir.
Yes.